certain broader aspects like your social issues, then certain social justice, what is the basic structure of Indian society. Now yesterday I think when I was discussing about this urbanization, I think I forgot to give you a flow chart there. Just give me a second. I mean, that particular flowchart was categorically mentioned in your Niti Aayog report. So I thought, why not mention it? So I forgot to mention it. Like in any kind of urban governance issues, it might be with respect to issues of local bodies, or it might be with respect to issues of skewed urbanization, you can straight away use this as a structure. What was the way forward I had given with respect to urbanization?
Planning, financing, training.
Planning, financing and training. Okay. Rehabilitation. Yeah. Is this color fine? Is this color fine?
So white.
Decentralization, capacity building, citizen participation, spatial planning. I think I had given about urban spatial planning yesterday. Urban local body finance, city economy. Any issues that are centered around your urban governance, you can straight away use this structure. It's a very safe structure. Now when you look at the different issues of urbanization also, don't you think all these are the issues of urbanization? Issues of urban local bodies, right? And your way forward also for your urban local bodies. Now when it comes to your city economy and your ULB finance, what is the difference? What is the difference there?
Which you are getting from the city and which are allocated
Maybe from industries.
Maybe from industries. You all know something called as asset monetization. Yes? What is asset monetization? Basically you monetize a barren land kind of thing that is left empty with your army base or army camp or your any other public sector unit. So that kind of asset monetization can be included under your city economy, or the nature of certain businesses. Now when you talk about your urban local body finance, it is mostly centered around your taxation. It is mostly centered around your taxation. Now I think spatial planning, citizen participation, capacity building, all these are clear. Now what about your decentralization? What element of decentralization? It has to do with your 12th schedule. What's your 12th schedule? Basically, it has certain set of functions which are 18 in number, which has to be devolved to the urban local bodies as per by the state government, which is mentioned in your 74th Constitutional Amendment. What is the article related to this? Constitutional article? Article 243. Article 243W. Now please remember in your Local governance. I think you are supposed to remember certain articles. I'll tell you what are those articles. Article 243A, Article 243D, Article 243K, Article 243I, and Article 243G. Your A is basically formation of your Gram Sabhas. Your D is with respect to reservation. K is with respect to elections. I is with respect to finance commission. G is with respect to devolution of power to the panchayats as per your 11th schedule. Now in the corollary to this, you are basically supposed to remember with respect to urban local bodies, Article 243P, Article 243Y, Article 243ZA. I think for finance commission it is Y. Just a second. I don't remember for reservation in this thing, I'm not able to recollect, but for finance commission it is Y. Then for this it is W. Just check once. What is for reservation in urban local bodies? PQRS. It is T, sorry. It is T. 243T for reservation.
It is ZA, ZY and ZW.
ZA and 243Y. For elections it is ZA, for finance commission it is Y, for devolution of powers it is G and W, and for your, what is for your district planning committee, DPCs, 243ZD, and your metropolitan planning committees, your 243ZE. These are extremely important articles that you're supposed to remember with respect to your local governance. Because when you go back and look at the questions with respect to your mains, at least one question is there from your local governance in GS2. So that questions are mostly centered around these aspects only, either reservation part, either elections part, either finance part, or with respect to administration in the form of your DPCs or MPCs, district planning committees and metropolitan planning committees. So these are few articles. Now in your polity, one technique for you to state articles is, for each topic keep at least 5 articles. For example, federalism, you keep 5 articles. Your article 1 is such, right? Then your article 356 has an impact, right? Your article 246 has an impact. Your article 248 has an impact. Your article 355 has an impact. Your article 365 has an impact, right? Your 7th schedule has an impact. So for federalism, keep certain articles. For local governance, keep some articles. So for each broader topic, keep few articles so that you can use them handy, right? For your welfare of marginal sections, anyway we'll see with respect to your scheduled caste and scheduled tribe, and with respect to women we'll see different constitutional provisions. So nothing to worry about those, but for polity at least you remember these articles, so that any introduction of you in your GS2 paper will have only 3 elements. Please remember. One is your constitutional article. First thing, it's a mandatory must, jabardasti, right? Then a case. Then the third one is, if you want to include a conceptual understanding of polity. For example, if I am talking about local governance, I will say, suppose if they have asked with respect to the incomplete devolution of functions, then I will say as per 11th schedule and 12th schedule as of your 73rd, 74th constitutional amendment, in bracket I will write article 243W and article 243G, G, there is an incomplete devolution of functions which will breach the principle of subsidiarity. Now here I have used my articles. I have used a conceptual understanding of something called as principle of subsidiarity when it comes to local governance. Yes, I told you now introduction has to be like RGB trailer. Now it is like that only. Jabardasti you put in. If you are not getting any case, use Keshav Nanda Bharati's case. Because basic structure, under basic structure you will have 20 things. So for federalism you are not getting anything, you are not remembering any article as per Keshav Nanda Bharati's case 1973. It is part of basic structure. Or Minerva Mills or SR Bommai case. So keep things like this handy, like around, I think a one to 2 page notes on these things, because between your GS1 and GS2 you will have 1 hour time to revise. So in that time, keep these 2 pages very handy, because it is very certain there is going to be a question on constitutional bodies or statutory bodies. There is going to be a question on local governance, right? There is going to be a question on some basic part like your basic structure doctrine, checks and balances, all this. So there are at least 5 to 6 areas where there is certainly going to be a question. Okay, now if you take GS3, there is certainly going to be a question on agriculture. There is certainly going to be a question on, say, some environmental issue. So whatever environmental issues, whatever environmental topics or any constitutional provisions, keep them handy there. Okay, so that's how we jabardasti write certain things in our mains exam. Now it might seem very irrelevant, but for the examiner it will make a difference, right? So this is all about the urban governance part. Now in continuation of your urbanization, we have seen one of the fundamental factors of urbanization was migration. Migration. Now as part of your GS1 syllabus, you have migration also as one of the topics. I don't think your geography faculty has covered it. Did he? No. What about demography? Did he cover? No. Will he be covering, or do you want me to cover it?
If you can, it's better.
It's geography is completed. Acha, so you will not be having any more classes. So you want me to complete?
Yeah.
I'll take off demography also then. Demographic transitions, demographic pyramids. Maybe we'll see towards the end of this session, if we get time, we'll try completing those demographic concepts also. What do you basically mean by demographic dividend? What do you basically mean by demographic dividend turning into demographic disaster? We'll see what is demographic pyramids. What is Indian nature of demographic pyramids? What is the Norton-Steen's concept of demographic transition? We'll see what is Malthusian theory of population or demographic transition. What are the stages that India has undergone? So we'll see all these aspects. These are extremely important. These are extremely important with respect to your GS1.
So we were also to see migration as a security issue.
Yeah. Acha, that time I didn't tell then.
No, sir.
I told, okay, I'll talk about push and pull factors, then okay.
Yes, sir. And then we'll be discussing all
We'll
the
deal.
security.
Yes. So now when you look at this migration as an issue, there are certain things that which we are going to deal. The first thing is definition, status, types and trends, factors, consequences, and what is the way forward. Right? So these are certain things that we are going to deal with respect to your migration. Now can somebody define what is migration? It is basically movement of certain band of people or certain section of people from a source region to destination region. That's a very simple definition of migration. Basically it means that movement of band of people from a source to a destination region.
So does it not apply to individuals, or is it only
Individuals also. But when we are dealing as a concept of, this migration, will deal it as an aggregate concept mostly. Because in individual levels, we would have hardly any consequences of migration. But when we deal with respect to these, migration. Now when you talk about the status, I think before status we'll look into different types of migration. Now I think yesterday I had already introduced with respect to different types of migration. One, internal, and the other one is external. Internal migration is such that within the political boundaries of the country, right? Now this internal can also be further classified into intrastate and interstate. Intrastate and interstate. Now when you look at internal migration which is happening within the political boundaries of the country, yes. Now when you talk about external, it is about moving out of the political country to some other region. Now as part of this interstate or intrastate, it can be further classified into rural to rural, rural to urban, urban to rural, and urban to urban. Rural to rural, rural to urban, urban to rural, and urban to urban. Basically, this is the classification of migration. So, if they ask you what are the types of migration, you can straight away deal with this. Now, what you basically define intrastate as within the state boundaries, interstate between two states. Now, rural to urban, rural to rural, you can define, right? And as per the external migration, don't you think this is the resultant of something called as diaspora concept? This is the resultant of diaspora. Yes. Now when we look at India, we have around 70 million diaspora. We have around 70 million of diaspora. Now when you look at the trends of these particular types, which is the second aspect where they can ask you in a general question. Now for respect to answering on trends also, you divide it into external and internal. Now as part of external trends, you find that most of the migration is happening or most of the diaspora is into here West Asia. West Asia. That is one trend, West Asia. The second trend is here North America and Europe. Then last trend is here South America. Here South America. So the highest population is with respect to West Asia, then your North America, then your Europe, then your South America. So this is basically trends of migration when it comes to the external aspect. Now when it comes to internal aspect, now your 2017 economic survey, it talks about this internal migration. Now it said this is the cluster which is considered as source region for migration. This cluster is considered as source region for migration. Now from this particular source region, you find that they are radiating out to different populations or different regions, especially at Delhi, Gujarat, Maharashtra, your Karnataka, Tamil Nadu and AP. So a general trend when you talk about your interstate migration in India, we find that the northern belt as the source region and the southern belt as the destination region. Yes? This is one trend. Northern belt to southern belt is one trend. The other trend with respect to migration is unindustrialized or agricultural states to industrialized states. Unindustrialized or agricultural states to industrialized states. One classic example with respect to the migrant workers of your Gujarat, Surat, with respect to, I think yesterday we had discussed about slums, Surat, the gems and jewelry industry, the polishing of diamonds. Gujarat happens to be one of the destination regions of your unindustrialized agricultural community migrating to industrial states. Your Maharashtra also happens to be one of such destination regions. Now Maharashtra because of your service sector, your Gujarat is because of your industrial sector. Now you take your Tamil Nadu. Tamil Nadu also you find most of the workers from your Bihar, UP, all this. Now Tamil Nadu, for example, if you take Coimbatore, you have a textile industry which is very much flourishing. Now when you have a textile industry very much flourishing, when you look at the worker composition there, they are mostly from this region. This region. Now I think in the most of the boutiques also, like where most of the women run these boutiques, for them the workers are also from mostly from Calcutta, West Bengal, this region. Because when you look at the nature of these regions, we find that their socio-economic characteristics are, or they have very poor socio-economic conditions. Now when they have very poor socio-economic conditions in all these regions, don't you think they are acting as a push forces for them to migrate to other regions? And when you think that these industrial states like Gujarat, these industrial states like Maharashtra, when they are able to provide employment, don't you think it is acting as a pull factor for these populations to come there? Yes. Now we will see what are the factors, and under factors we will see what are push factors and what are pull factors. Are the trends clear? One is north to south, unindustrialized to industrialized. This is one. If you want little more, if there is a standalone question or a 10 marker with respect to these trends, then if you want to write little more, you can talk about even the gender bias in the nature of migration. Now when you look at the nature of migration, it is mostly your male members. It is mostly your male members who are migrating for employment, who are migrating for education. Yes. Now if you talk about the nature or the trends of migration of your female candidates, it is mostly the prime reason is marriage. The prime reason is marriage. It is not the employment, but it is marriage.
It's also considered as migration.
Yes.
Individual.
Yes. Because what did we define migration as? Any sort of movement from source region to destination. You're basically here, your destination is your in-laws house. So it is also considered as migration. That's why when you're talking about trends, we basically talk about a gender bias with respect to the trends. Now when you talk about your international migration or external migration, we find mostly your male members migrating for education. Now the reason behind female members not able to migrate to international regions is because of security. Is because of security. Now when you find your Middle East or West Asian countries, your Kuwait, your Qatar, all these are mostly pumped up by your male members, not your female members, because there is lack of sense of security. Okay, and the fundamental reason behind female migration is marriage, and in the present times it is education to an extent. That becomes the second factor. Is this clear? This
Even within internal and external trends, we see different kinds of biasness in this gender.
yes. Yes. One is, see, in trends you can talk about one as the regional aspect, the second thing as gender aspect. Right? One is regional aspect, from which region to which region. from industrialized or non-industrialized to industrialized, or from agriculture to industrialized, from north to south. Okay, so regional to, one is regional aspect, the other one is gender aspect. Okay. So we have seen types and trends. Now what about the status of migration? When you talk about status of migration, your economic survey states that around 139 million people migrate. Your economic survey states that around 139 people migrate. This is with respect to interstate migrations. This is with respect to interstate migrations. Right? Now we'll come into factors. Factors. Now what are the different factors or causes of this? Unemployment.
Education process.
Now please remember, whenever you are answering something, ensure structure. Let it be a structured thought. That is very important, more than content. Content everybody will have, because out of 5 lakhs, I think at least 1.5 lakh people are very sincere in their preparation. Okay. And out of 10,000 who get selected for mains, I think around at least 6 to 7,000 people are very decent with respect to their content. So the only differentiator between each one of you will be the structural aspect of it. Because when they ask you causes of migration, everybody will write. Everybody will write. Now suppose if they ask you causes of rise of Buddhism, everybody will write. But it is only how well you structure your answer. Right? Now, with respect to the factors of migration, here push and pull factors. Now just take 2 minutes and think how can you apply the structure of push and pull factors for your rise of Buddhism, rise of Jainism. Can you apply?
Yes.
Yes? Now you got one common structure. You got one common structure. Basically, when you are writing an answer, the one thing you're supposed to remember is how to structure it little differently compared to others. And keep at least 10 to 12 templates of structures and apply it. Because at the end of the day, all these broader understandings will enable you to save time in exam. Okay. So here, this push factors, pull factors is a very common thing. One you can talk about, suppose if there is a question on agri distress. Agri distress. If there is a question on rise of Buddhism or Jainism or heterodox religions. Then if there is a question on, say, migration itself. Or if there is a question on slum formations. Can't I use for all this same structure? Yes. Very safely I can use. Now when you talk about agriculture, mostly this agri distress or agriculture, mostly people use pre-harvest and post-harvest. This is a very common structure. But now I want to make examiner a little more interesting when he is looking into my paper. So I'll use this structure. Now please remember, making him more interesting doesn't mean that he gets disconnected from it. Right? We need to take care of that connect between you and the examiner always. Right? So tell me some push factors and tell me some pull factors for your migration.
Pull is better employment options.
Pull is whichever are conducive, whichever are favorable, and whichever are absent here. Yes. Now push factors are those which are inconvenient. Those basically they feel that kind of inherent pressure in staying in that particular region. For example, push factors, security, then access to basic social needs, access to basic social needs. For example, health, education, sanitation, water. Health, education, sanitation and water. Now when you talk about pull factors, basically a better standard of living or better standard of life. Pull factors. Basically whatever are conducive for you to ensure a better standard of life, we can call it as pull factors. It might be with respect to decent access of your social needs also or basic needs also, housing, education, all this. Now pull factors can also be safe environments. Environment which is devoid of pollution. That is the reason why we have seen a concept called as counter-urbanization yesterday. Counter-urbanization, one of the fundamental reasons behind counter-urbanization was to ensure a better standard of living through clean environment. That is the reason why they started shifting from urban to rural regions. Right? So these are different factors of migration. Now all these factors, whatever comes to your mind, there will be a lot of convergence between push and pull. So ensure that you divide 3 up, 3 down. Because whatever is a push factor is a pull factor in the other region. So don't try to overlap things. Just give 3 different things up, 3 different things down. Now try to focus with respect to push the basic needs, the security, and with respect to pull factors, try to focus on opportunities. Try to focus on opportunities and resources. Now anything that is giving an impetus or which is acting as a force multiplier for your opportunities, for your resources, that will be your pull factors. Anything that is impeding the access to basic needs or denial of security, that will be your push factors. Is this clear? So we have seen the status, definition, types and trends. Now we'll come to, we have seen the factors also. Then we are supposed to see the consequences. Now tell me, what are the consequences of your migration? Consequences?
Burden.
Consequences divide. Please remember, in your social issues, any consequence you are writing, use your pestle analysis. What is the political consequence? What is the economic consequence? What is the social consequence? What is the technological consequence? What is the legal consequence? And what is the ethical consequence? You have 6 points here. You have 6 points. Any social issue and any consequence, put it under these things. Now in internal security, we could not have generalized structures because their concepts are very specific. There we were able to get a broader understanding But here we could not get that kind of broader understanding because it is all about interlinkage here. Now the concept of urbanization is completely interlinked with the concept of, and a concept of migration is completely interlinked with the phenomena of regionalism. And it is interlinked with the concept of communalism. Right? So what is the political consequence of migration?
Administration.
One is administration. One is administration. Then what about the voting rights? Is your electoral vote portable across nation? Just like your ration card, one nation, one card. Do you have your electoral card also one nation, one card? No, it is not portable. That is the reason why the policy makers are not focusing on the issues of migrants. Why? They don't have a vote. They don't have a vote. Now if they are having vote, telling we would not be studying about migration only. We would have been deburdened with the concept of migration as part of your GS1. Now the portability of the voting rights of each of these migrants are not applicable. Now what is your Rohingya issue? It's the same. It's the same. Right? Then what is the economic consequence of migration? Basically competition. Your opportunities. Basically your employment opportunities, to be very precise. Your employment opportunities. Employment opportunities, competition.
Financial burden on government.
Very good. Burden. Burden with respect to administration of these migrants. Next is social consequence. Social consequence, basically you would have xenophobia. Xenophobia is one. Then
Marginalization.
cultural disconnect. Cultural disconnect. Or that cultural disconnect can be manifested into cultural subjugations, cultural assimilations, right? Then what about technological? I don't think we'll have any technological impact with respect to migration. Okay. We'll have?
From rural to urban areas.
Okay. What kind of impact?
No.
Lack of access to technology.
Access to internet or
Technology. Okay. Okay. Maybe that can be put in the last order point. Okay. Now what about legal? Legal?
Land issues.
Legal consequence. Basically with respect to resources. Resources. Resource competition, it might be land, for example. Right? Or it might be with respect to certain disputes. For example, your NRC was a legal consequence. NRC was a legal consequence. Now, what is the ethical aspect? What did I tell yesterday? Ethical aspect. One ethical aspect is very common with your social issues. The morale of the individual is affected. The morale of the individual, the morale of the communities, it is affected. Now, as part of your social, apart from xenophobia, apart from cultural disconnect, here as part of legal, you can even ensure the increased crimes. Increased crimes against these migrants. Or these migrants acting as criminals with respect to the region wherever they have migrated for. Now, as part of your economic, please include labor exploitation also. labor exploitation.
So there can be also positive impacts also.
Of
Positive impacts
yeah, whatever we have seen yesterday.
regarding this concept.
Yeah, same positive impacts. One is with respect to remittances to the source region. Then availability of factors of production in the form of labor, right? Then cultural promotions. Cultural promotions basically are universalization and parochialization phenomena, right? Is this clear? Now I think the last aspect, what is the way forward? What is the way forward? What is the way forward? Pura is urbanization.
Works for this.
One nation, one ration card, one nation, one voting card.
Basically portability of social security schemes. One way forward is portability of social security schemes. Portability of social security schemes. First thing. Then second thing, legal protections. Legal protection. For example, your Construction Workers Cess Act 1971 or Construction Workers Welfare Act 1971 or Unorganized Sector Workers Act 2008. There are different such kinds of legal protections. Okay. Or it might be, apart from legal, it can be in the form of institutional mechanisms also. Now, when you talk about your institutional mechanisms, apart from your legal, it can be that National Commission on Migrant Labours. National Commission on Migrant Labours or National Commission on Unorganized Workers.
Are there commissions like that existing or?
No, we are just suggesting. We are just suggesting. That's why we are calling it as way forward. One is portability, legal protection, institutional mechanism. What is the other kind of way forward? Cultural sensitizations. Cultural sensitizations. Now, when you look at the issue of xenophobia, basically the issue of xenophobia is originated from certain cultural stereotypes, certain cultural prejudices, certain fears of cultural subjugations, certain fears of cultural disconnect, certain fears of loss of culture. Now, in order to avoid such kinds of misunderstandings or certain apprehensions on the part of your cultural part or cultural sphere, we need to basically sensitize the population. You basically sensitize the population regarding the culture. Now, when you look at the mass exodus of your northeastern people from Bangalore in 2013, the fundamental reason behind this was xenophobia or absence of cultural sensitivities. Now, when you look at your 2016 mass exodus of Bihar workers from Surat, the fundamental reason was xenophobia and absence of cultural sensitivities. Now, when you talk about the unrest that is present with respect to your Assam, with respect to the Bengali migrants from your Bangladesh, the reason here is again xenophobia. Xenophobia or cultural inconsistencies or cultural disconnect or fear of cultural subjugations. So, in order to avoid this phenomenon of xenophobia or in order to avoid this phenomenon of violence that is existing between two different communities, or between the migrants as well as the host communities, we need to go for something called as cultural sensitizations. Right? Way forward more than sufficient. 3 to 4 points for your way forward is more than sufficient. Now, if you are not getting any way forward to write, use Ali mechanism. I told you about Ali. Yes. Institutional, administrative, and legal. 2 points under each, you will get 6 points. For any institution, if you are not having any institution, put National Commission on whatever the issue is. Yes, that is how we do. And if there is no law, put, suppose if it is a social issue, X bracket Prohibition Act can be put forth. Or there is requirement of lot of political will. These are certain common things which we do when we don't have points. And believe me, for 10 questions at least, you will not have points. You will have hardly 2 to 3 points where you are supposed to bluff it up to around 250 words at least. I mean 250 words at max, or 180 to 190 words at least. Okay. So this is all about the migration. Right? So we have seen the definition, we have seen the status, we have seen the types and trends, we have seen the factors, consequences, and way forward. Now, what is the present day relevance of migration, studying migration? It is in the context of your COVID. It is in the context of COVID. Basically, your unplanned migration. Your unplanned migration, like your skewed urbanization phenomena, your unplanned migration is also one such. Right?
What is demographic distress?
Demographic distress. Can you wait for 2 days?
2 days?
2 days, yeah.
Okay.
When we are dealing with demography, we will talk about all this. Demographic distress, demographic disaster,
Discussing about this.
we'll study. Now, when you deal migration as a security issue, whatever consequences we have seen with respect to migration, all this result in your security issue. What we said when we talk about security, basically in order to ensure the unity, integrity, and sovereignty of the nation. Now, unity, integrity, and sovereignty of nation will have an social sphere, will have a political sphere, and will have a legal sphere. And to an extent, an economic sphere also. So, your xenophobia is a kind of security issue. Yes. Then your increased crime rates is a security issue. Your cultural disconnect and the consequence of cultural disconnect in the form of violences, right, is an issue. Now, the fundamental factor of migration, when you talk about external migration, we find that infiltration is an issue. When you look at the porous borders of your Pakistan, or when you talk about this Bangladesh, it is mostly an infiltration activity. So that also adds up to the migration as a security issue, right? I think did we discuss climate change as a security issue that day? Yes. Now that also will become one point in this migration as a security issue. Climate change. Because what happens? Resource burden, over exploitation, further repercussions or negative externalities in the form of then developmental reasons and the security aspect. Okay. Now tell me the example for each of this. What is the example for your security aspect? Jammu and Kashmir. Jammu and Kashmir. What about administrative convenience? Uttarakhand. What was the reason behind Uttarakhand division from your Uttar Pradesh? Hilly terrain. Apart from hilly terrain, it was a kind of extreme region. So in order to ensure this phenomena of administrative convenience, they have gone for separation of Uttarakhand. Then what about regional imbalances? Telangana and Andhra. How? You can talk about your Vidarbha region today. Vidarbha region of Maharashtra, they are asking for separate statehood. Then your Bundelkhand, Bagelkhand of Madhya Pradesh plus UP. Or the issue of Gorkha land. The issue of Gorkha land. See, Telangana will preserve it for political aspirations. Our Honorable Chief Minister. Huh?
Development reasons also, sir.
Development. Oh, sorry. Don't worry. Huh? See, generally we find it as certain political aspirations only. Development reasons also to extent. To extent. Don't worry, I am a supporter of Telangana only. Huh?
Sorry, even but according to government, for administrative convenience, Jammu and Kashmir also are divided.
Now that is the latest development. But as such, when you look at the Jammu and Kashmir, it is more of a security aspect. Your instrument of accession, all this was because of security aspect only. Then ethnic background here, Nagalim, Greater Nagalim, demand for Greater Nagaland. What about your developmental reasons? Developmental reasons? Here Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh. If you want, you can write Telangana also. Right? So these are certain reasons for your or factors of your regionalism. Now when you talk about this manifestations of feelings of regionalism in any of these states, there can be certain different factors. One, it can be because of linguistic. Yes. Two, it can be because of, say, culture. One is linguistic. Two, it can be because of culture. Three, it can be because of the regional affinity. For example, people from Coorg and all, this Karnataka, they have a lot of regional affinity. So you are from Coorg? No? Karnataka, okay. They have a lot of regional affinity here. Coorg, Udupi, all this Mangalore regions, they have a lot of regional affinity. Huh? Whole of Karnataka also, yeah. Like in Bangalore, I think if you're studying in any engineering college of Bangalore, they'll have one separate team for Bangaloreites. Okay. In normal gully cricket also they play like that only. Whole of Bangalore will be, or people from Bangalore will have one team and rest other people will have some other team and they'll fight. They'll fight to that such an extent that they'll break each other heads with wickets. Okay, so a lot of regional affinity. I mean, it is not only with Karnataka, even Tamil Nadu have that. Even Tamil Nadu,
Language.
not only North, even with Andhra, it's any kind of, any other state or any non-Tamilian, they'll have that issue. Right? So these are different kinds where your regional or regionalism as a phenomena can manifest. Okay. Now you can even add something called as, this regional affinity only can be put in other way as sons of soil. Sons of soil movement. Now with respect to employment reservations, with respect to, for example, if you talk about AP, they have reserved 75% of private jobs for AP people. That is even with respect to your Haryana, with respect to your Himachal. The fundamental reason behind that kind of promotion of sons of soil movement is this resultant of regionalistic tendencies. Is this clear? Now, if you talk about types, you can use these: linguistic, cultural, and sons of soil or regional affinities. Now, these are the different factors, 6 factors, more than sufficient. Now, if you want to elaborate on each of these security aspect, I think in order to provide that sense of security with respect to your political boundaries, with respect to your political boundaries one, and with respect to the national security aspect also, right? Now when you talk about your administrative convenience, it is all about, one is access to different administrative mechanisms. For example, in capital city, it might be somewhere far, right? Now, I think some days back, they had talked about multiple capitals for India. I think there was an article in Hindu and Indian Express also. Yes. Now, the fundamental reason behind having multiple capitals, be it your judicial capital, financial capital, administrative capital, is to ensure administrative convenience and is to leverage or reap the benefits of decentralized model of development. Now, such kind of multiple capitals, be it your Andhra Pradesh or be it your Uttarakhand, be it Rajasthan, be it Maharashtra, all these have multiple capitals. Now, the fundamental reason is to realize this democratized or decentralized model of development. Now, regional imbalances. Now, when you talk about your regional imbalances, one region, because of its resource richness, they might be developed or it might be developed. But whereas in the same state, the other regions are underdeveloped. For example, Rayalaseema in AP, right? Or for example, Adilabad region in your Telangana. Or for example, Vidarbha region in your Maharashtra, or northern Karnataka as part of your Karnataka, like your Bidar, all these regions. Now, although they have resources, but the quantum or magnitude of development that is happening with respect to these regions are very minuscule in nature. Now, because of regional imbalances in terms of development, what happens is that feeling of alienation, that feeling of under and misrepresentation appears in oneself, leading to a kind of resentment, leading to a kind of conflicts, right? Now, when you talk about your ethnic backgrounds, this is mostly the phenomena of your northeastern states. This is mostly the phenomena of your northeastern states. I think when we are dealing with insurgency, we have dealt with ethnic complexities, ethnic backgrounds, and the fundamental reason is multiple ethnic groups and fear of cultural subjugations, right? Or sense of protection of one's own culture. Now, political aspirations. Now, for example, if you talk about Punjab and Haryana also was a consequence of political aspirations only. Although they had a joint administrative mechanism, one of the reasons for them to get separated in 1966 was political aspirations. Political aspirations in the sense, the political representations. For example, your Justice Party which was formed in 1916, one of the main agenda of your Justice Party was to realize a kind of political representations for non-Brahmin communities. Your Justice Party or your self-respect movement, all these were consequences, or all these were anti-Brahmin movements. The reason was mainly political aspiration in order to realize political representations. Now, when you look at this quota system in your politics or quota system in employment, the reason is traced to your Justice Party movement. Justice Party movement, 1916, your C.N. Mudaliar, Chettiar, all these three people, T.M. Nair, Okay, that is what is meant by political aspirations. Then developmental reasons and your regional imbalances are interlinked. Okay. Now if you want, you can even include cultural identity as one reason. Now when you look at cultural identity, one example for cultural identity is Jharkhand, because of tribal populations. These are different reasons or factors of regionalism. Now what are the measures? What are the measures? What are the measures?
Consequences and impacts.
Huh?
Consequences and impacts.
Acha, we have not dealt with consequences and impacts. Impacts or consequences? Again, I said impacts or consequences are two types, positive and negative. Now, what are the impacts?
Increased opportunity, costs, increased administrative convenience.
Positive is administrative convenience. Okay.
Employment opportunities,
Okay.
development
Better
of the
participation.
backward areas.
So basically development or distributed development, I can say. Now we have talked about regional imbalances or developmental deficit as one of the reasons of regionalism or causes for regionalism. The impacts of regionalism is diffused development or distributed development. Then
Promoting culture.
culture, cultural connectivity. Cultural connectivity. Now what about the negative aspects?
Political and
One is secessionist tendencies. Secessionist or conflicts or lack of political and economic stability. Any other consequence of negatives or negative consequence? Don't you think it will impact the territorial integrity of India? Khalistan movement, classic example.
it is in the bonus.
Which one?
Though the states are found within the region, so it ultimately they belong to
See, when you look at, for example, if you look at Khalistan or Greater Nagaland movement, now take for example Greater Nagaland, it wants to unify with some of the regions of Myanmar also. So it basically impacts the territorial integrity of India. Basically secessionist or unity and integrity. Right? That feeling of hatredness. Don't you think it will impact the diversity dividend? It is going to impact the diversity dividend. Yes?
just tolerance between the states.
That is manifested in the form of diversity dividend. So these are about impacts. 3 sufficient. Now what are the measures? What are the measures? Measures, one is constitutional measures, administrative measures. Tell me constitutional measures. for tackling the issues of regionalism.
Schedules 5, 6.
Constitutional, we can say 7th schedule. 7th schedule, Article 246. Yes. Then we can say asymmetric federalism. The concept of asymmetric federalism in the form of Schedule 5. Schedule 6 here, Article 371A2. Okay. Then your Article 262 and Article 263. What is your Article 262? Basically, it deals with the interstate water disputes, where your parliament can form a tribunal for tackling the interstate water disputes as part of your Article 262. Article 263, Interstate Council. Right? Now, what about administrative mechanisms? For example, your zonal councils, your Niti Aayog, GST Council is also here as part of Constitutional Article 279, Clause A. Zonal councils, Niti Aayog. Then, Ek Bharat, Shresth Bharat. Ek Bharat, Shresth Bharat. Then separate ministries or departments like Department of Northeastern Region, donor. Certain developmental packages. For example, Backward Region Development Plan. BRDPs. Backward Regions Development Plans. Yes. Now at individual level we can talk about sensitizations, cultural sensitizations, or sensitization with respect to different regional identities. Is this clear? Is this clear? So this is all about regionalism. I think we'll take a 10-minute break, right? We'll take a 10-minute break and assemble back at 3:50.